Hey guys and girls, so recently for reasons unknown I've been watching book reviews on YouTube, and I've noticed a lot of people generally tend to do summaries where they give quite a lot away and then they just like leave the very ending, like they explain everything except for the very end, which kind of sucks because there's a lot of surprises in some books I find, and if you know what's coming it kind of takes away the the oomph factor of it. So I figured I'd try my hand at this considering I've got nothing else to do and I'm stuck babysitting, so why not? I probably kind of shot myself in the foot here because this is the first time I've actually ever read a graphic novel as well, and I've read Interview with the Vampire, obviously the book, this one right here, but this is the first time I've actually reviewed a graphic novel, but I absolutely love this one. This was actually on par with the book, I think, and this is Interview with the Vampire, Claudia's story, which was adapted and illustrated by Ashley Marie Witter. I don't know how graphic novels work. It says Anne Rice at the top, but I'm not entirely sure if that's just it implies that it's characters in the world created by Anne Rice, or whether Anne Rice actually had a hand in this, but it says the art and the adaptation were by Ashley Marie Witter, so let's just go with that. This was also her debut, and to be honest, it was a really good start. Her art style was brilliant. I mean, she even done this cover illustration of Claudia here, and her art style and her illustrations are just phenomenal, to say the least. I should probably clarify that you really probably should read Interview with the Vampire first to really get the filling the missing pieces that are present in this book, because this book starts kind of in medias res, and certain characters, in particular Louis, come across as kind of like a damp dishcloth. They don't really have any charisma or anything to them. But there's a reason for that, and if you read Interview with the Vampire you'll know why, because this is told entirely through Louis' perspective, so you know what was going through his head at that specific time. But Claudia's story is basically, if you've read Interview with the Vampire you already know how it begins and you know how it ends, but you only know the half of it, because obviously there was a lot that Louis didn't know that Claudia did, and there's a lot that she did with Lestat when Louis wasn't present. But anyway, if you're new to this, I'll try and keep this in the realms of, new to the Vampire Chronicles. I'll try and just review it as a novel it is, rather than keep saying, in Interview with the Vampire this, in Interview with the Vampire that. So this is neither a sequel nor a prequel, it's just a shift in perspective really. It's now Claudia telling the story of her life. And to be honest, I think Claudia was a much more in-depth character than Louis was. As much as I love all of Anne Rice's characters, I think Claudia was actually a lot more in-depth. Not so much in the original book, but definitely in this one for obvious reasons. So this one picks up, Claudia is basically an orphan. Sorry, I went off track there. I was trying to address the newbies. So for the newbies, Claudia is a 6-year-old orphan who was found by Louis on the streets one day. I'm not going to say how and why, but she was then basically turned into a vampire by Lestat, and this picks up literally the moment she woke up after she took Lestat's blood. She ingested Lestat's blood and she became a vampire. So towards the start of the book she literally is just this 6-year-old girl who, because of her father figures and the amount of money they've got, she is pretty much spoiled rotten, doesn't really care for much. She kind of worries where her mum is and where her parents are for a little bit, but she quickly gets over it once she's soiled in riches. So yeah, she's got the mindset of a child at the beginning. You kind of see her thoughts, but she's narrating it as herself as an adult, so it's more just in hindsight, I guess you could say. So yeah, she's more just a child towards the beginning of the book, so she's your typical, plays with dolls, father figures mean everything to her, but she still kind of misses her mum, so you've got that on her conscience sort of thing, like where's her mum, so you've got that. And then as time goes by, I think roughly about 60 odd years goes by, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 60 years passes and Claudia is now a woman, but there's a slight problem. She's frozen in childhood, obviously, because she was turned as a vampire as a child. And as she's gotten older, she's developed feelings for Louis. She's like madly in love with Louis, but because she realises that she is a child in his eyes, she basically starts to have a bit of resentment towards Lestat, who is basically the other half of Louis. Like, Louis and Lestat are two totally different characters, like, whereas Louis is like the sentimental, like, good guy, if you like, trying to cling to his humanity. Lestat is pretty much just a carefree vampire who believes that he is what he is, and if the humans have got a problem with that, they can all die, pretty much. Doesn't really care for humanity, he only cares about vampires. And the conflict between, or the tension between Lestat and Claudia is actually really good. It makes for some really interesting dialogue and some really interesting scenes, and it's a great plot to devise to drive the plot forward. So, like I said, if you've read Interview with the Vampire, you already know why, but again, you only really know half of it. It's explained in much more depth. Because if you see, as you see here, these little black boxes, these are all Claudia's little monologues, if you like, her narration. So, that aside, I'm not going to spoil anything more about the plot because it is one hell of a story, and it's quite a healthy length as well. But it covers the original plot of Interview with the Vampire from, as far as Claudia goes. So, that aside, what did I think of it? To be honest, I loved it. I thought this was actually really, really good. I'd almost put this on par with the book, if not slightly above it, because the characterization was done so well in this. Like Claudia, you'd actually feel, if vampires are real, this would seem very believable. It is essentially a tragic love story, and Claudia is a very sympathetic and tragic character, but she's so well characterized and so fleshed out in this book that she almost seems human. You'd actually believe that this was somebody's autobiography, despite the fact that it is a graphic novel, so it's all speech bubbles, but it's just so well done that it could have been a novel, honestly. The art style I really like you'll notice, I don't know if it will show up on camera, see if I can find it. Yeah, red is the only real colour that comes through. The rest of it's all kind of black and white. Fire as well, so you have orange, but to be honest, I don't mind that. Some people might find it a bit dull, but I don't mind it at all because I think the art style and the actual colour palette really complement the gothic setting of the story. So it's got a real sort of, is it noir they say, feeling to it. Let's just go with that. And yeah, the artwork was phenomenal. The characters were brilliant, how they're drawn, how they're characterised. Again, Louis comes off as a bit as a dry cloth towards the first half of the novel, but again, read Interview with the Vampire and you'll see that he is actually a very in-depth character. Almost as tragic as Claudia in a sense, but not quite. You also get, because it's Claudia's perspective, you also see a lot more into her mindset of how she felt towards Louis, but it's not just love she feels towards Louis as well. There's also, she's sort of torn between feelings with him. She's got a bit of hatement towards Lestat, obviously, but as the turning point comes in the book, like in the Interview with the Vampire, it kind of happened from the beginning to the end, but here it starts in medias res and then backtracks to how she was found by Louis. And when she was found with Louis, the events that unfolded led her to sort of despise him, but she couldn't despise him because she loved him too much. That probably didn't make any sense, but it makes sense if you read the book. Anyway, overall, I highly recommend this book to anybody, regardless of whether you like graphic novels or not. As I say, I've only ever read 2 in my life. This was the first one, and I loved it. I would actually put this on par with Interview with the Vampire. I've said that so many times now, but never mind. Yeah, it's a great start if you want to get into graphic novels, or if you're a fan of the Vampire Chronicles. It's a definite must. I kept putting this off because I've got all the Vampire Chronicles and I've read them all. I can't review them all yet though because I'm currently educating my mum. My mum thinks Twilight is like the holy grail of vampires, so I've lent her like the Vampire Chronicles over time, and she's up to Queen of the Damned at the minute, which is like the third one. So I'm sort of educating my mum on that, and my mum doesn't read as quickly as I do because she only really reads when she's travelling to and from work on the train, so could be a couple of weeks before I get around to doing that. But I do have a stack of books to review for you guys today, so no worries on that one. Where was I? Yeah, I kept putting this one off because I thought, well, I already know the bloody story. I've read Interview with the Vampire, I already know. I know what's going to happen, I know how it's going to happen. But I was surprised by this book, and pleasantly so as well. They'd done it so well, and as I said, it really made Claudia feel... She was really just a side character in Interview with the Vampire, but here she really comes into her own, and it's definitely worth every penny you pay for it. It is a bit pricey though. I paid like 10 quid I think for this, and the actual original price is $30.99 when it came out, so I don't know if that's a thing with graphic novels, but don't usually like paying double digits for books. So yeah, to be honest, I'm not complaining though, because this was really, really good and I loved it. So if it sounds like it's up your street, or you guys are familiar with the Vampire Chronicles, definitely pick this one up. You might feel a bit iffy about it first, but trust me, this will grow on you, and I think you'll really appreciate Claudia more as a character. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, guys. If I carry on, I'm just going to be rambling in circles, and if I turn around and say on par with Interview with the Vampire one more time, I think I'm going to blow my own head off. So yeah, that's my 2 cents, guys. Thanks for watching. See you soon.